Hello. Gcina.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Can't hear you. Can't hear everybody.
You can't hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't hear.
I can hear you now.
Good,
Okay,
good.
sorry. I just had to turn up my volume. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
I'm so excited about this session. I'm looking so forward to it. Are we ready to start?
I am.
Hi, Ms Febe. Yes, I'm literally just looking for Zulaikha quickly. I think we're only missing her. So let me just do a quick check-in on her. Yes.
Okay, so as soon as she's ready, we will start off, and welcome to everybody else joining.
Thank you, Phoebe.
We're having a very exciting program today with a really great lineup of speakers.
We are honored.
Yes, yes.
Sis Zubeida, how are you doing?
Gcina, I wish I could be in Durban with you.
Yeah, you must come to Durban. It's nice and warm here.
Yeah, I think I must move.
Time to move.
Yeah, I think I must move, yeah, to Durban.
If you come to work with Tina Schloppy, you'll be exhausted. You have so much work to do.
2 years ago, I thought to myself that in July, every year I should go to Durban. I should live and work in Durban because I'm not liking this cold anymore. I cannot deal with it.
I can understand.
But COVID has stopped me this year. COVID. If it wasn't for COVID, I would have come.
Yeah, absolutely. You would have come.
Because
you would have had some lovely stuff going on here.
I can work from anywhere.
That's the thing. That's the thing. The amount of work we do now online is unbelievable.
It's fantastic, actually. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yay. It's Phoebe.
How are you, ma'am?
Thank you.
Good to see you as always. Good to see
Yes,
you. Yes, yes. Okay, just a second.
I say right,
Okay, we're going to start. Zulaikha is going to join us in the process, but she's just still busy setting up. Good afternoon to our esteemed panelists, and a very warm welcome to everybody that has joined us today on this June edition of the Charlotte Maxeke Presidential Dialogue Series. We started in January this year. In honor of our centenary anniversary, and we will continue until December, where we have dialogues about different aspects of her life. Today we are having a very interesting and a very illustrious panel of speakers. We will be focusing on the book by Zubeida Jaffer, Beauty of the Heart, The Life and Times of Charlotte Mania Maxeke. And our three panelists will be the author, Ms. Zubeida Jaffer, Dr. Tina Schloppy, master storyteller, author, poet, and we shouldn't miss actress as well, because you also starred in films as well as on the stage. And then, of course, our youngest panelist, Ms Zulaikha Patel, student, author, and activist. And when we introduce them, we shall be talking about a little bit in more detail about their CVs. But a warm welcome to you to this monthly dialogue of the Charlotte Manie Matreke Institute. And once again, thank you very much to the Institute for organizing these monthly dialogues that help us to better understand the life and times and the contribution that this wonderful women have made towards our struggle, towards our countries in so many different spheres of society. Last month, we focused on her role in the National Association of African Women. We had a speaker from the AME Church, and it was a really wonderful session. And we once again looking forward to the session today. If you want to ask a question, we're going to have a short Q&A session at the end. You're welcome to raise it in the chat group, and we will then pick up those questions, as well as on Facebook and other platforms that we are putting forward or sharing this webinar. But we continue to highlight the work of Charlotte Matreke and reflect on the lessons from her exceptional life. And we're going to start today with Ms Zubeida Jaffer, who's the author of Beauty of the Heart. I know, I don't know whether I can say Mum Zubeida Jaffer, as since the 1980s, when I was a very young student at UWC already, she was a very experienced journalist, working in community newspapers, and we knew that when we read her things, that she'd be reflecting, in a sense, the stories of people from Mitchell's Plain to Khayelitsha to Crossroads to all over the Western Cape. She's the author of not just Beauty of the Heart, but also Love in the Times of Treason, the story of Aisha Dawood. She's written the story of Bibi Dawood, as well as an autobiography, Our Generation, and is just recently have started her own publishing company. And we will talk a little bit, hope that in talking to her, she will also tell us about this long journey that she has, focusing on where she is today. But let me start by introducing, handing over the floor to our author and journalist, Zubeida Jaffer, who will talk about how the book came about and when it was published, why the title Beauty of the Heart, what are the values of Mum Charlotte, and then of course she will then do a reading from the book Beauty of the Heart, which will help us to see just the beauty of the book that we're focusing on today. Over to you, Ms. Zubeida Jaffer, and a warm welcome.
Thank you very much, Phoebe. Such a pleasure to be with Tina, Phoebe, and we are hoping that Zulaikha will join us soon. It's really wonderful, the opportunities that this focus on Mum Charlotte has brought to us. Today is a very stormy day in Cape Town, and it's very cold, and the storm just doesn't seem to abate. And it reminds me of the time when Mum Charlotte crossed the ocean to the United States of America, way back in the 1800s and in the 1890s and in the 1880s. And I think for a moment about her in that cabin in the ship where she was thrown around, where they were all thrown around by the storms, and wondered to myself, as I do in the book, whether she at any stage doubted that this trip to the United States would lead her to a possibility of studying and being a student of higher education. Now, she didn't know that she was going to achieve that, but this was a dream. And all she knew when she crossed those seas, those stormy seas, was that she was part of a choir, the Jubilee Choir, that was taking them as a group of South African young people cross the ocean to play them and sing in the United States. So it's really extraordinary that she had this passion for higher education, and then by a set of circumstances in the United States, she landed up at Wilberforce University. I'm not going to tell you all those details because those details are in the book and you can read about it. But what I'm going to just talk a little bit about is to explain and share with you that, 5 years ago, when I was at the University of the Free State, and this book was published in 2016, I had no idea that it would be, part of the national conversation in 2021. I did have a sense before that, and I worked on the book for 3 years. I did have a sense before that I was dealing with a story that was quite extraordinary. And I had come across it by chance because I saw a poster at the University of the Free State, and then I'd asked questions about it, and that had eventually led me to be urged to research the book. Professor Jansen, then the rector of the University of the Free State, said to me, when I said to him that there isn't, solid information, reliable information about Mom Charlotte, and he said, why don't you do the research and then write a book about her life? And I was immediately happy to do that, which was quite strange because normally, I don't agree to a book project easily because it's a huge undertaking. And when one writes someone's life, then that is can sometimes be extremely arduous. I found this so in the case of this work, and specifically because she, she was born 150 years ago, and so there was really nobody alive except one person I'd met whom had ever met her. So this was created a great difficulty with confirming, information throughout the process. But what had touched me greatly was when I came across this little quote or speech of hers she'd given, in 1928 in Johannesburg, and she had mentioned, the idea or the thought of beauty of the heart. And when these words came across my screen, I immediately felt that this had to be the title, because what she was saying was that beauty of the heart, that it was very important that we nurture the beauty of the heart, because if we don't have dignity, if we're not dignified and we don't conduct ourselves in a dignified and good way, then we cannot be out there as an example or as a guide to everyone around us. And it's a particularly important notion at this time, if we think about it deeply, when there's we see so much erratic and unruly behavior around us, and I'm sure if she must have been alive, she was alive, she would have said, this kind of way we behave with one another, the way we speak with one another is a reflection of decline. It's not a reflection of progress in our community, in our society. And we are faced with a great deal of difficulty all around. And so, but one of the things that's in our control, strongly in our control, is the way we behave and the way we conduct ourselves. It's the the manners that we cultivate. It's how we try and improve upon our interactions with the world and with people, and how we inspire and help. So I feel that the central message of this book is, and her story is, that we have to make an effort to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And that is within our control. We can choose to speak well. We can choose to be kind. We can choose to be dignified, and encourage everyone else to be the same. For as long as we don't do that, we, of course, have a society that is very far from the values of our ancestors and our forefathers. I remember as a young journalist, covering, the trade union movement and others in the townships of Cape Town. I was always so struck that the first thing that the men would do when they got up, they would remove their hats before they spoke, and then they would, proceed in a very orderly, in a very, decent way. There were basic practices that has been part of the fabric of our society, and that I'm sure Mom Charlotte would be very, very, passionate about. And so it's not just a matter of us discussing, what her journey was about, but it's a matter of us critically looking at ourselves all the time. And by doing that, to get ourselves out of this, hole that we have dug for ourselves at the moment. I have decided to read a passage about her graduation, because this title of this talk is about education and Mom Charlotte. And I thought, perhaps I've read different pieces in the book, but perhaps it would be interesting to read that scene where she graduates in 1901, because it is such a, moment of glory that still resonates 150 years later with all of us. So allow me to do that, which will bring me to the end of my presentation. And yes, of course, just give me a minute to get to the right page. 1 second. Yes, I am. I start where I explain that the university kindly posted the program and photograph of her on graduation day. She was wearing a long flowing white dress with a lace bow across her bosom and a thin strip of black ribbon knotted like a bow tie at the end of her neck. Magenta, white and black were her class colors. Her sleeves were puffed from her shoulders. That's why I've got puff sleeves today. I thought, let's do it. Her sleeves were puffed from her shoulders to her elbows. The lower sleeve tapered tightly to her wrist. At her waistline was pinned a carnation, her class flower. Her head, with shortly cropped hair, was slightly tilted to the right as she looked at the camera. In the formal portrait, she was standing on a fluffy white mat, adding a touch of comfort and elegance to the moment. After all, Ohio was fur country. Ohio was where the university was situated. On 30th of June, 1901, the university conferred the Bachelor of Science degree on Charlotte, making her the first South African Black female graduate, first South African Black female graduate. Not allowed to study in her own country, she had made her way to another to achieve her dream. The graduation program started at 10 a.m. with a procession led by Professor Calhoun and opened with the Lord's Prayer. This was followed by an address by the class president and a presentation on the class history by Ms Minnie C. Scott. Then Charlotte's contralto voice rang out in the gathering as she gave a solo performance. The contralto voice is a type of classical female singing voice whose vocal range is the lowest female voice type. It is regarded as the rarest of the female voices and is present in as few as 1% of the population. Her voice was further sculpted as she participated in the singing choirs that were an integral part of the university learning experience. The Wilberforce graduation program tradition soon became the practice at most other Black institutions of higher learning. Again, as in Britain, she had left her mark. She was no shy wallflower hanging back in the shadows. Her alma mater warmly welcomed several other students that she sent to them over the years. Charlotte's achievement must be viewed against the backdrop of higher education for women in South Africa and the UK. In 1829, the South African College was established as a high school for boys in the Cape. This eventually became the University of Cape Town in 1918, but it started growing substantially in this direction after 1880, when diamonds and gold were discovered. The demand for skills in mining gave it the financial boost it needed to grow. But skills development was confined to white males. In 1895, women were admitted to Victoria College, which became Stellenbosch University on 2nd of April which became Stellenbosch University on the 2nd of April 1918. This college admitted women students in the mid-1980s, and the first 8 graduates passed through with BA degrees in 1897. So just 4 years before Charlotte, she was already studying. Mom Charlotte at Wilberforce in Ohio did a few women in South Africa obtain their degrees. And so for her to have obtained it, so at the same time, more or less, was certainly extraordinary, and against all odds compared to the women who were allowed to do this in our country. So thank you very much for those opening comments. I hope that it sets the scene, Phoebe, for our discussion today.
Thank you very much, Zubeida, for that reading, but also giving the background to how you came about writing the book. I made a mistake earlier when I said centenary. In fact, it's 150 years. It's not 100 years, it's 150 years. I don't know what you call. I know that you call 50 years Golden Jubilee and then 100 years a centenary, but we need to find out what is 150 years called, because this is an amazing achievement. And as that reading of yours show from Beauty of the Heart, that indeed she was a pioneer, and I like what you say, she was no wallflower, in all of the different areas, whether it's in higher education, whether it's in politics, whether it's as a unionist, she very assertively did so with a sense of dignity and the beauty of the heart that you mentioned, which caught your imagination. I think it's also a very important point that you made about the difficult journey and the decision about writing biography. Because in a sense, writing a biography, you have to get into the head and the life of someone else, about their experiences and their life journeys and their attitudes towards life. And as you say, it's not an easy choice, but I think that you have certainly contributed towards women's biography, not just of Mom Charlotte Maxeke, but also Aisha Dawood, in terms of and your own story that you also tell. So thank you very much. And I think that we will continue to focus on that contribution, as well as maybe later ask you about your publishing company and why it has such a beautiful name, an interesting name that like the book. But thank you very much for that contribution. We're now going to the next speaker, who is no stranger to writing, Dr. Tina Schloppy. I don't know, her biography takes up a couple of pages. You know, so many awards as an author, as a storyteller, as a performer, as a poet, and she's certainly one of our cultural icons in the country, not just in the country, but across the continent. Her books, or the one play that she's well known for is Have You Seen Zandile? Dr. Mhlophe, I must tell you that my son, when he was about 4 years old, loved Sawubona Zulaikha. Oh, hi Zulaikha, and I had to read it. I can't remember the number of times. It must be at least 20 times because he just loved the story.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, yes. But I think that your body of work certainly is an inspiration, and particularly your performance of the art of storytelling. And I think it's therefore appropriate for us when we look at this book reading session of Beauty of the Heart to hand over to you to read your chosen part of the book, and then talk a little bit about whether you have a question for the author about the book. Over to you, Dr. Schloppy.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to greet everybody as well as our viewers who are joining us on this very, very important gathering. You know, we might not be sitting in one room, all of us, but many are joining us from different parts of the country, maybe even of the world, when we're talking about this amazing pioneer, this pathfinder, this great icon, this really, really a person. I call her our torchbearer, because she was way, way ahead of her time. And Mama Charlotte Manyama was first this person who was hungry for knowledge very, very early on. And then when she joined the choir and went to the UK, she wasn't going there bowed head and feeling sorry for herself. She knew she had something to bring. And that choir was singing their hearts out, and people who looked down upon the brown-skinned people of the African continent had to sit up and listen. That says something about the type of people that went to England with that choir, and I wish to applaud them. I sometimes wish I had a way of sending my ear back in time to hear them. I really dream of sending my ear back in time, but I cannot do that. I can only imagine. And when Zubeida told me that she had published this book, I got so excited, remembering the very first time I heard the name Charlotte Mhlophe from the voice of Paul Makgoba, a poet I'd never met before, a poet who mentioned the name Charlotte Mhlophe with such a reverence that you wanted to meet this person. And so when there was a book coming out, I thought, I am so grateful, because there's a tendency in our country of not celebrating and revering women in pioneering places in our history. So I'm very, very grateful. I wish to say thank you, Sis Zubi. Thank you so much for doing the kind of work that we have done, and many more are doing these biographies, and that's something to be celebrated. Siyabonga, enkosi kakhulu, bayadanki. The part that I would like to read is from your book, The Beauty of the Heart. By the way, when it came out, we bought 10 copies and we gave it to our board members, to friends. I just like to spread good news. You know, we can't just have one copy for me. Doesn't make any sense. More people must see and read this lovely, lovely book. A lot of work went into it. It didn't just happen. A lot of research, a lot of work went into it. So I celebrate you for that. On page 152, I looked at this paragraph and I thought I'd read it for you. Page 152. The Cape Argus wrote this about Mama Charlotte Mhlophe. Ever since Mrs. Mhlophe has been in Johannesburg, she has to live in close touch with her own people, many of whom she has been able to help. Recognizing the value of her work among them, the government has now created a post for welfare worker, which she holds under the Native Affairs Department. For Mrs. Mhlophe, who in her own person proves the development of which her people, given the opportunity, are capable. They have all, through life retained a pitiful heart for the least of them. There is not one among them so down and out or so debased that she will treat her as a Mama like never others. So I'm really celebrating you for that. And I would like to say to Zubi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, we do.
Zubi, when you
I can hear you.
Read a paragraph like this, and you think about people who are social workers, it's not an easy job that. It's not an easy job at all. We know other people, and yes, again, Mama Winnie, and there are people who are born social work. Of Mama Charlotte, who did many things, who was a first in different spaces, and encouraging women to spark. Do you think in the times we're living in, she would want to travel the whole country, not one another? Would she be upset about the greed and the selfishness and the thieves and all the things that are taking to my question to you?
No, I didn't quite get the whole question, Gcina, because
let me just repeat the question. I think that the issue was that given the kind of values that she stood for, what her view would be about the sense of greed and
she was born.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
I think she would have been appalled, as we all are. The only way, I mean, you know, to see the lack of care and feeling that people put on display, and consider this to be quite acceptable, is beyond our imagination. We couldn't have imagined anything quite as crass, as crude, as ugly as what we're seeing now. And I'm assuming that she would have, she would have been horrified, because we are, you know, and I must say that the only way I can cope with this that's happening at the moment, and is to think that, you know, we are 60 million people, 58 million people, and I seriously don't believe that this behavior represents all of us. I think that this behavior is being peddled by a group, a strong section within amongst us, but a reasonably small section. And I wish I had the capacity, or we had a way of quantifying that, to say, okay, these are the people, you know, we've got 1 million people in this area, and there are 5,000 people behaving this way, or 10,000 people behaving this way, that we can cope with or we can not believe that this is who we are, because this is not who we are. This is something that, can we say, God or the universe is throwing up into our faces as something within the fabric of our society that is very ugly and must be dealt with and must be cleaned up. And I would imagine Mom Charlotte would have gone out of her way. I remember the words of Bibi Dawood before she died a few years ago. She said, as ek net jonger was, sal ek gou vasgevat het. If I was just younger, I would have taken, control of the situation in Worcester and made sure that people eat. She was very concerned, as we all are, that people are not eating, that people don't have food. And she said, she was explaining to me that we can solve it, we can make sandwiches, we can make soup. And as ek net jonger gewees het. So I would imagine if Mom Charlotte were around, she may have said, if she were younger. And so it's really, really up to our young people to step out now and to say, these problems are not insurmountable. And the problems that Mom Charlotte was faced with and her contemporaries at that time were far worse, of a greater, all the land was taken away. The political rights, all political rights were virtually taken away. And so we are horrified now because we are faced with this, but at the same time, we must keep perspective and we must work to, to solve the problems.
Can I ask another question?
Of course, go for it.
Do you feel that we might be just lacking in spreading the word about the information that is at our disposal about people who are doing positive things in society? Because when you see people who are doing what is really, really good, and often it's people who don't have a lot, who have got just a little bit, maybe they can feed 4 people in the house, but they make an extra plate, a 5th plate, and they share with another person, a neighbor, or somebody who's going past, who's very, very hungry, and things like that, or somebody who buys school shoes for a child who does not have school shoes. When we see that kind of positivity, should we not make it our business to speak out about those things, to encourage others that you don't have to be a millionaire to do good?
Well, my view is that there's a lot of that going around in the country, that people have very good hearts and are very generous. South Africans are very generous. And I feel that I'm now in my 60s, I personally have made a decision that I'm not going to spread all the doom and gloom and misery and the awful stories with whatever time I've left in my life. I am going to strengthen that sector of society that is doing all these wonderful little things all over the show. And they are doing in my street, in other streets all over the country. People are doing, a lot. But sadly, we're stuck in a narrative in the world and in South Africa where we're focusing only on the difficult or a section of the issues that confront us. And that is the pandemic and corruption, focusing on the parts that are challenging and disintegrating, but we're not having the conversation about how far we've come and how far our young people have come and what our people are prepared to do, the extra mile they are prepared to go. I can speak endlessly about this, but I think we've got limited time, but I can give so many examples that, have inspired me for so long.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Mhlophe. I think that you certainly, both in terms of your reading and the section that you wrote, as well as the question to the author has raised some of the issues that face our nation, and which Mom Charlotte Maxeke, as she was born 150 years ago, certainly would have been concerned about. There's an interesting quote, just the last part of our conversation, by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie Ngozi, the author of Americana and Half a Yellow Sun, etc. And in one of her TED talks, she made the point that what she called the danger of the single story. And what she says is that the danger of the single story is not that it's not true. So there is an element of truth in it, but that it becomes the only story. And I think that the conversation that the two of you just had about the problem of corruption, the lack of dignity, the kind of difficulty that our society faces, that if we only focus on that story, it becomes the only story. And that in a sense, part of what we need to do is to look at the holistic of the story and also look at how do we also tell the other sides of the story. It doesn't mean we shouldn't tell this story, but we must do all of it. I always say to people that, you know, if you tell a child, when you bring up your child, or if you're a teacher or you're interacting with a child, if you just tell them about what they do wrong, then they're going to think that they only do things wrong. You have to also praise a child when they do wrong. You must reprimand them and explain to them why they do wrong. But if that's all you do, then that's what they're going to think they are. And that's what their sense of their self will be. So the conversation about who we are in the single story, but also telling multiple stories, is very important. And I think that the life of Mam Charlotte Matleke shows that multiplicity of South African stories: a social worker, a trade unionist, a political leader, and she wrote speeches. She started at churches. She sang in a choir. I mean, all of it, schools. Yes. I mean, she was just so amazing in such a short space of time, all of the things that she achieved. Just a question, is Zulaikha here yet with us? Tosh?
Yes, I'm here.
Yay!
Oh, hi, Zulaikha.
She's arrived.
She's arrived. Okay, so let me quickly introduce our last speaker, Leica Patel, who has been a student activist fighting around issues against racism in a school. The nation got to know about her when around the hair issue. She has been an activist ever since, campaigning for women's rights, but also around issues of against racism. And she just recently launched a book, a children's book, and hopefully she'll also tell us about it. But Zulaikha, over to you, and you will tell us which section of the book you will read, and then also a question to the author. Over to you, and a warm welcome. Zulaikha, just kindly unmute. Okay, I'm not sure whether we've lost Zulaikha. Okay, while we wait for Zulaikha, I just wanted to read, I couldn't resist it, my favorite part of Beauty of the Heart, which is on page 24 of the book. And it's the story when she was quite young in the Eastern Cape. And it starts off by saying, from a young age, Charlotte's sights were set on seeking knowledge. Her sister Katie was a muse. When her father told the story of how he did not understand the meaning of writing, and became scared when a Boer farmer gave him a box of figs and asked him to deliver it to the storekeeper in the village some miles away. The farmer also gave him a piece of paper that showed him how many figs there were and what the cost would be. Her father ate 10 of the figs on the journey and was shocked when the storekeeper looked at the paper and said 10 figs were missing. He ran away because he was shocked. He couldn't read that, in fact, the number of figs in the box. While Katie laughed, this is Charlotte's sister at the story, Charlotte's response was different. Unlike her sister, she did not think it was funny when her father told the story of his illiteracy. She became aware that her father's people, coming from the Ramagopa village in the north, could neither read nor write. Someday, she said, we'll go there to teach them. I'll go to England to study what the white people are taught, then I'll come back to teach our people. And indeed, that's what she has done. And this is really one of my favorite parts of the book and favorite stories. Zulaikha, are you there yet? Zulaikha?
Can you hear me? Apologies about that.
Okay.
I got kicked off the meeting.
Okay, we can hear you now. Over to you. Go for it.
Okay. Thank you so much for welcoming me. I've chosen to read from page 140 up until page 141, and this part of the book focuses on Mom Charlotte's leadership. And I'm going to be reading from the third paragraph on, actually the fourth paragraph on page 140. Charlotte was a leading light and not your average woman. She was a professional as well as a highly respected woman, often highlighting the plight of other women. Could it have been that she and her team were aware that there was little chance of the vote extending to Black women and chose to focus on the real threat, the curtailment of the limited vote for Black men? It seemed that they correctly anticipated what was coming. By 1936, the rights were taken away from these men. From 1921 to 1930, there was a great deal of backwards and forwards until the bill was finally passed into law. Colonial and union politics muddied in the waters. Charlotte's organizational efforts appeared to not have impacted on them. It must be borne in mind that the majority of the members of the WEAU were British loyalists who believed that they had to set aside their grievances and serve their government and king. Walker said, I quote, "Many members had been born and raised in England and still looked at it as home. They agreed to subordinate their suffrage campaign to war relief activities and to place the organization at the disposal of the government." Testifying before the 1926 Select Committee examining the Women's Suffrage Bill, a Mrs. Grant of the WEAU perhaps summed up the approach at the time best. "Well, in this country, it is no use talking of justice. If we talk of justice, we are told we shall go under. Such a native policy as we have is based on injustice. We should, women, be so wonderfully just, when after all, the white men in the country are not entirely just to native men." Thank you. That's the part I chose to read.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, do you perhaps have a question for the author?
Yes, I do. And my question is actually linked to this very particular subject, which is written about in these 2 pages, which mainly touches on Mom Charlotte's leadership, on her leadership, and how her leadership was unique and it was different from many others at the time, and how she sought to advocate not just for herself but for other women as well, because at the time women weren't allowed the political vote as well as Black men, but only a certain class of Black men were told that they would be allowed the vote, which is where we see classism arise. And so my question would be, in writing this part of the book, a lot of the times we've seen that historically the leadership of women has been reduced and has also been erased, has been deliberately erased by those that have written our history and handed our history down to us. So my question is that how were these parts of the book written, and what did the process of discovering and unpacking the history which which not many know of, which describes her kind of leadership. What was that process like?
Zulaikha, that is lovely to listen to you. It was that's such a loaded question, and I could be speaking about it forever. But just to say that a lot of these conclusions and analyses that I kind of came or made in the book came after extensive, research. I had over the 3 years, I had 6 students that were helping me, sit in libraries and comb through documents, because I couldn't come to those conclusions unless I had primary information. So a lot of that depended on the primary research. And particularly what I was most struck by, and I got some of these speeches on my website at zubeidajaffer.co.za. I was most struck by the content of the speeches that she made. Zulaikha, you go around, you speak a lot, I speak a lot, Gcina speaks a lot, we all speak a lot, but we don't tend to often record or keep a written record of what we said. Mm-hmm. And to find somebody in that time, it just blew my mind. Every time, we found something like that, I thought, how is this possible? How is it possible, that a woman, I haven't answered that question. I haven't been able to answer that question. Is it because she had some backup and support from within the church? Is it that I know her husband ran one of the newspapers. Was she kind of naturally encouraged to do that? Speech or comments, statements in Britain are recorded. She was 21 years old, and so and I don't think it was. I would like to just correct a perception that it wasn't that she was just doing this. There was a whole group of people, a whole group of enlightened people at the time that she was part of. I would call them the Kimberley Circle, and I think this, as young people, you need to study this further, because they were an amazing group of people from Zulaikha and various others. And from them came the Kosi Sikeleli Africa, and, all sorts of innovations that we still have benefited from today. So what we see from the example is that you don't have to be a lot of people to make an impression and to leave a strong mark on your society. But you must choose what it is that you're going to do that will help that society grow. If we just want to, say, have knee-jerk reactions and want to burn everything down and, throw the baby out with the bathwater and say Madiba sold us out and not look at it deeply, then we are not going to have the benefit of and the wisdom down the line to improve our situation. So I think that her reactions, her influences was in a sense an expression of the time that and the fact that she landed in Britain at the time of the suffragette movement, and then she also arrived in America and fell into the arms of the AME Church, which was the sort of, to assert she got, besides when students just make demands and don't understand the whole context and the process we're in, then sometimes I feel they're doing a disservice. Not that I'm not saying they mustn't, be assertive, but we need to understand what we are part of a bigger project. We're part of a whole, 150 years or more of efforts to cement education in the fabric within our society. So I'm not sure whether it covers everything, but I'm sure you get a broad sense of what I'm trying to explain.
Okay.
No, I do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Zulaikha. And do you want to just talk about your book that you just published? 30 seconds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I just published My Coily Crowny Hair, which is my first book, which has been about 2 weeks ago announced as a bestseller in CNA. And at the moment, it's just recently been made available in all other bookstores, exclusive books, as well as Ethnic Kids. And My Coily Crowny Hair is basically a children's book that seeks to affirm and empower young girls about self-love, as well as loving their natural hair, and also understanding the power that lies in their identity and understanding their worth. And it's aimed at also propelling young girls into feeling confident and understanding that they can achieve and become anything they want to become. And I wrote this book because growing up, I grew up a child that had a very strong relationship with reading and books. And when I was growing up, I never got to see characters that looked like me or represented my reality in any of the books that I was reading. And so I realized that gap in representation, which ultimately became a gap I wanted to fill through writing this book. And I also wanted to cement the message that was at the heart of the movement in 2016 and cement it in something that would be permanent and available for centuries to come, so that a young Black girl child picks up the book and knows that she's valid and worthy for centuries to come.
Okay, thank you. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Okay, we've now come to the section where we're going to have questions from our audience. We've got about 5-10 minutes. So if there are any hands on the floor that want to make a comment, that want to raise a question, you may raise your hand now. I see we still have, is it Ambassador Tinso Tengium Tinso, all the way from, is it from Europe, from Spain, who's also joined us. So indeed, as Dr. Mhlophe say, it's not just across the country that we've got have participants, but from across the world. Okay, so we've got the floors open for questions. Okay, okay, Africa Makongo. The floor is yours.
Yes, good evening. Thank you so much for this interesting and enlightening session. I thoroughly enjoyed it, especially when we look at Charlotte in a different light and not in a, a strong Mbokodo light, but sort of humanizing her as a woman, as, and as a, a mother. I like that context where it says she went overseas to learn, about how education has shaped the children of Europe and has come to South Africa to sort of, impact down on that knowledge and ensure that we benefit as the South Africans at the time. So I like that approach. And, another thing that sometimes bother me is that the women of today, GM, have a problem of saying that we want to emulate, the life of Charlotte. However, we have a problem of then, gatekeeping or want to hog everything for ourselves. We don't have that pay it forward attitude that Mama Charlotte had, because we're fighting for a space, we're fighting for territory, we don't want, we get threatened by another, woman who shows strength and character, and you can see that, they are coming. Instead of nurturing, and guiding that talent, you want to stifle, because we have a problem in nowadays. I don't know if it's selfishness, but we don't want to multiply. We don't want we don't want many Charlottes, we want us to be the one on the forefront. And it's wrong, you see, because we tend to even breed children who will be, inward looking instead of focusing on building, others. I mean, somebody said to me, a leader must pride themselves, with how many people they have empowered. And if we cannot do that as South African women, then I think, we didn't learn anything from Mayor Charlotte Maxeke. So I want to applaud, I haven't read the book, ma'am.
You're going to buy the book.
I'm definitely going to get a copy after this session. I'm definitely going to get a copy, and I'm very much inspired. And I like the way you interacted, with the story and how we relate as an ordinary, woman, how we relate with the story. So I'm very interested in looking forward to reading the book. And I want to see women, who want to empower others and who want to impact knowledge on others, so that we can all grow together.
Okay,
I mean, so if just as I learned, sorry, GM, when you give power to a woman, you empower the whole nation. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much for those very wonderful words. Just to say that the book is available from Number 10 Publishers, and please get the book. It's certainly a book that should be in every single home. The story about this wonderful South African icon. And certainly as we celebrate 150 years of her life, we need to learn who she is and pass on. And a book is something that you don't just buy for yourself. Many other people can read it in your home. You can give it to friends. And in fact, it becomes part of the legacy of Mom Charlotte, of when you rise, you bring someone with. I'm going to just give ours, since I don't see any other hands. Are there any other hands? If not, I'm just going to give to our three panelists the last word to just give their 1 minute closing remarks about the book, Beauty of the Heart, but also about what we can learn from Mom Charlotte, but also I think encouragement to other young writers and women to write. Write your stories, write the stories of your mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers, of your neighbor, of women that do wonderful things in your community. We need to keep writing. Okay, I'll start with Zulaikha, then Dr. Tina, and then Zubeida will finish. So Zulaikha, over to you, 1 minute.
Thank you. There's so much that we can learn from Mom Charlotte, especially in just the work that she did and translating it into solving a lot of the social injustices that we're facing today as a country. And I think that even in terms of just looking at her leadership and the way she led, she never walked alone. She never walked alone. Even when she said, and if you rise, bring someone with you. That was a testament to the fact that she never walked alone. And I think that that's a very important lesson that we can all learn in looking at the South Africa today, that should any South African and any person in the country bear any shackles of oppression, then as a country, we haven't reached the destination of freedom, and we can't brand ourselves as free whilst even one person can't experience the same. And in terms of writing, I believe that getting more and more young African girls to write will definitely change the face of education on the continent. because we will be the ones writing and taking charge of our own narrative. And I think it's very important that we not only empower young African girls and young African women to write, but also empower them to publish and be the ones that publish the work of our own writers.
Thank you very much, Zulaikha Patel. That's really wonderful words. Dr. Gcina?
Thank you. I'm going to read a quotation. Chapter 7, it says, "In all races, genius is like a spark, which concealed in the blossom of flint bursts forth at the summoning stroke. It may arise anywhere in any race. There is genius inside each and every one of us. Young men, young women, men, old women, people of all races, there's genius in each and every one of us. If we encourage that fire in one another, there's no way of stopping us being a far better nation than we are today. And I know for a fact there are fabulous people in my country. That is why hope is my walking stick. And thank you for having me in this session. I'm truly honored.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tina Mhlophe. That is for those wonderful words. Zubeida Jaffer, just your concluding remark.
Yes, I thank you very much. I am so excited. You know, Gcina and I'm sort of part of the older generation, I suppose. And then I'm delighted to that Tenjue Mtinso is there. I'm sure that when Zulaikha spoke, maybe all of us would have thought about Steve Biko and the struggles in the 70s, Zulaikha, when we were saying black is beautiful and that we are all black. And now to see you taking it onto another level and asserting it, you know, publicly and forcefully, and having your hair, you know, sort of just blossoming out there on the screen, it makes me so incredibly happy. I can't tell you how happy it makes me, because it is an expression of efforts, I would say, of our generation that has now laid the basis for you to blossom so fully. And I think that Mom Charlotte in turn had done that for her generation and those that followed. So again, I would say that the biggest lesson that we need to learn, even though we're going through a very tough time now, is that we have been, our path has been strewn with genius, as Gcina said, as Pixley Kasema said in that quote. Our path has been strewn with genius. And I just cannot understand how we still think we are owed more. You know, why can't somebody rescue us? Because we have been given everything. We've been given and we've been blessed at every level. So it's now to kind of find our way to give full expression to ourselves, to our inner selves, and to help one another, and to remind each other every day, you are beautiful, you are wonderful, you are gorgeous, you are talented. You have, each one of us, we've got God-given talents. And if we do that, then we can uplift one another all the time. You know, as Charlotte says, bring somebody with you, but don't say nasty things to people, and, you know, rather keep quiet when, you know, they make mistakes, and quietly help them, but, you know, tell them about their beauty and tell them how beautiful they look on that day. And so we are magnificent people, and we have to do the work to keep our focus there so that we can have the energy to go on to the next level. Thank you very, very much. I cannot say how privileged I feel that I could have written Mom Charlotte's story and brought her into the public space. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So to our three panelists, this is the book. Go and ask for it. Number 10 publishers, if you just Google it, and buy the book and give it as a present for someone on their birthday or just because they're wonderful people. We've come to the end of yet another wonderful session of the Charlotte Manye Matkeke monthly dialogues on the occasion of the 150th anniversary since her birth. And these events are organized by the Charlotte Manye Matkeke Institute. And I want to say thank you to the Institute Board of Directors as well as the staff for continually organizing these wonderful sessions that gives us different, multifaceted aspects of the life of this great pioneer. And it was such a pleasure tonight to have our great panelists tonight to discuss this book about her life. We can also make sure that we stay connected with the Institute on Twitter. The Twitter handle is @CharlotteMatkeke, capital C, capital M. And we look forward to seeing you. It's usually happened the last week of the last day of every month. So the next dialogue will be on the 31st of July. We look forward to seeing you. Thank you very much to Zubeida Jaffer, Dr. Tina Schloppy, as well as to Zulaikha Patel. And to the Charlotte Matkeke Institute, to the listeners that joined us on this platform, as well as on the different social media platform. Let us remember the words of Mam Matkeke when she said that if you rise, bring someone with you. And as our panelists today said, remember each other's genius. We all have God-given talents. And therefore, those talents and the genius that we have, we can only use to build a better society as well as a better Africa. Thank you very much and good night. Until we meet again, stay safe. Remember, we are in a third wave and we need to look after each other as well as after ourselves. Thank you very much and good night.
Good night.
Good
Thank you very
night.
much.
Sister take care out there.
Hey, Gcina, I read
Thank
this
you.
book on Kindle,
Bye.
so you
Take
must
care,
buy it
Sister
for me.
We love you. We wish to
Thanks,
see
Gcina.
you. Yes, we love you, my sister. Stay beautiful.
Now it's Gcina, stay beautiful.
Zubi, we're gonna send someone to kidnap you and bring you to Durban.
Yeah,
Come
I'm
and
ready
have
to come.
fun and talk
I'm
to
ready
people
to
here
come
about this amazing book.
and stay with you at that beautiful home of yours.
Yes, you will. Yeah, you probably, yeah, sometimes we have poetry readings in the Peace Garden. So who knows? One day
Yes.
you'll read, you'll have a reading session in the Peace Garden here in front.
Yes.
Wait, Gcina, you must also post. Zubi, I read your book on Kindle, but Gcina has just promised that she's going to give me a hard copy. It's on Kindle, dear, and it's not cheap. It says 17 pounds on Kindle.
Oh.
Okay, khumbule ekhaya ke uzayifumana ekulindile apha ekhaya. When you khumbule ekhaya nje, you got my number.
Okay.
Please contact me, Tinjiwe. I want to talk to you.
Be well. Talk to you soon. Congratulations.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Bye-bye. I'm going to call you now, Gcina.
Monitoring international mechanism and ensures between